Very kind of you. Yeah, so we're about to go have our retreat. We do a retreat twice a year, and we're heading off tomorrow. We do a nice retreat over at Bonita Hot Springs Ranch up near Gunnison. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And those of you online, I know at the Here and Now Center in Gunnison will be up near you. But I bring that up because the topic of the retreat is the synthesis of practice for a single lifetime, 5 powers. And so I thought that would be a nice review for tonight. It's such a foundational way to integrate our practice into our daily life. Really, I find an incredible value. Most people, as human beings, we tend to struggle with the daily practice. We can know what's good for us. We can have good aspirations, best of intentions, and then we cannot do any of it rather well. And it's really easy to just let our marble go back into our own groove. I want to create a habit. I want to see things differently. I'd like to suffer less. I would like to stop engaging in activities that I know are just not helping me. And I do it anyway. It's really difficult to counteract just the imprints and the karma and the habituated way that we live. There's just this habit energy that's just propelling us. And so there's a lot of things that we know we can do to improve our lives. There's a lot of things that we know, but there's often very little ability to implement them in our lives, and especially when we're talking about a practice that can liberate all suffering and find real freedom. These habits are ingrained, and at the core root of Buddhism is a very simple thing, that it's our own self confusion and grasping and attachment that creates an enormous amount of mental and emotional suffering. So there's just a very simple working hypothesis. And that is, the more that I'm able to live in accordance to the way things are, less confusion, more wisdom, the less mental and emotional suffering I have. That all mental and emotional suffering that we experience arises from confusion, misperception, misunderstanding. So all of Buddhism is about just understanding what's true and what's the nature of things, what's the nature of self and the phenomenon that I experience. And because we don't see it clearly, we create a lot of suffering in our lives. We create a lot of attachments and aversions, and then out of those attachments and aversions, anger and frustration and resentment. And somewhere in the lines, not only are we the most important person in the world to us, we quite literally become a sense of not just the center of the universe, but that it should be the way I want it to be. I find that really fascinating. And that somehow we think the world should go the way we think it should go. So I'm not just the center of the universe, I'm also kind of the creator of how things ought to be, and the grand master of all knowledge and wisdom. And it plays out in such subtle ways. It plays out in such subtle ways. I can actually sit there and think in moments that, I know how they should run City Market. I mean, I have no training in running a supermarket. I don't have any experience there, but, my mind could pretty much go on how they ought to do things. And how they should, work these trains better. If I ran Amtrak, boy, it would be happening. And how they should conduct airports, and how they should reroute this traffic. And actually, I mean, there's this mind that'll come up and just think like, here's how it ought to be. And can't they see it so clear? How delusional can we be in a day? And so with this confusion of, me being extremely important, me and mine being very important, there's a you and yours, and in my quest for happiness and joy, it's really all about me. And sometimes you're in my way, and sometimes you're helping me. And sometimes situations are going the way I would like, that are pleasurable, and sometimes they're not. And my whole world is just trapped in that. And then I suffer. I'm like this little leaf being blown around by the winds of life, because life is a messy place. And believe it or not, in fact, I am not in charge of the universe. And it's frustrating sometimes. Because, boy, I could run it much better than it is. I actually convinced myself that that could be true. I know how this ought to happen. So we could pretty easily see, if we look at this a little more clearly, that in truth, I'm one among many. In truth, the sense of John that I cling to so firmly doesn't exist in any way that I grasp to. I have a whole persona that I carry with me. And I'm not that persona, and I'm not the John I was yesterday, and tomorrow will be a different John. John is a continuous flow of consciousness that changes moment to moment, and has new lessons and has changed. The body has changed. My awareness has changed. My attitudes changed. My feelings changed. Like everything about me is changing moment to moment. And that's not how I see myself. I see myself as John. I'm this kind of guy. And is that true? I might say I'm a responsible guy. I get kind of, like I like to be responsible. But have I ever been irresponsible? Yeah. So now I'm irresponsible. Except when I'm responsible. Then I'm responsible. But sometimes I'm irresponsible. Sometimes, wow, I'm impatient. Except when I'm patient. I can be an angry person. I can be a kind person. None of those are stagnant. They're not who I am. In all the ways that I appear, there's always a dependence upon who I'm with, what's going on, what is the conditioning that gave rise to how I was raised and how I see the world and what's happening, and whether or not I had enough sleep last night. It has a lot of influence on how I'm perceiving the world. And I forget all that, and I can just think that how I see the world is the way it is. And somebody's kind, or somebody's a jerk, or somebody's this, or somebody's that. And I believe these appearances, based on how I feel about them, as being absolutely the way they are. And when I live that way, I'm going to create a lot of suffering, with a misunderstanding that how I perceive you and how I perceive me and how I perceive the weather, myself, the world I live in, is always an interdependent experience that's dependently arising moment to moment based on even my own attitude. I can shift my attitude, and all of a sudden my whole experience is different. One of the most common things that comes up, I get to teach in a lot of different places, is traffic. You just came from Durango, right? Man, a lot of traffic there, isn't there? It's cranking with traffic. That City Market parking lot there. Whew. You feel like a hero if you can get in and out of that without bumping into somebody. And then, so one thing that we say is, I'm in traffic, or I am traffic. It's a very different experience. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a long haul truck driver. And that's his mantra lately: I am traffic. And it's a shift. It's a total shift of experience, because when I'm in traffic, you're in my way, and it's frustrating as hell, and there shouldn't be traffic, which is, kind of irrational and insane, right? But I'll go there, right? So you can see how just a shift in perspective changes my experience. I'm in traffic, I am traffic, and all of us are trying to get somewhere safely. And we all have families and we have places to go, and we have fears and worries and concerns and struggles, and we're all going somewhere. That's a different way to drive, isn't it? Other than, you're in my way and you shouldn't be there, because I have somewhere to go. So, this confusion of being the center of the universe and how things ought to be, and judging everything in my experience as to whether I like or don't like, or whether it suits me or not, or what gives me pleasure or doesn't, really becomes the basis of a huge amount of mental and emotional suffering in our lives, because fundamentally, I don't have control over all that. And the very same things that give me pleasure one moment won't give me pleasure the next moment. And people will say these interesting things like, oh, boy, I just can't live without you. I hope you never leave me. And then after a while, they're saying, boy, I just can't live with you. Same person, sort of. And then we'll think that when we finally get something we like, we think it shouldn't change. My relationship shouldn't change. My job shouldn't change. Boy, Carbondale shouldn't change. Durango shouldn't get all that traffic. That's just wrong, man. It used to be such a cool town. It changed. It's not like it used to be. Yeah, it probably changed, because things are changing all the time. So here's where we live in this world that's just insane mentally, trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent, which is, by the way, everything. Everything's changing all the time, including me. And I try to get something the way I like it and freeze it like that and keep it as though that can provide me happiness. And I try to avoid the things I don't like. And then I do snap judgments around people and things, people I like and don't like. And I really want to avoid them. And just the weirdest things can happen. Another human being can come and sit down next to me, and I could be abjectly miserable because he's a jerk. Don't you know? Have you ever been that? Have to sit next to someone you don't like? You can get frustrated just them walking by the door. Man, I hope they don't come in. Another human being. All of this is done mentally. There's absolutely no physical pain going on with a human being sitting next to me. There's pretty much, hopefully, not much physical pain sitting in a car going somewhere. Must be on the road for a long time, maybe. But you can see where this cycle of mental and emotional suffering, I don't need anyone's help. I can be pretty miserable all by myself. And so what the Buddha basically taught was how to not suffer, how to eliminate this tension and stress and emotional struggle, primarily because it's not based in reality. If we saw clearly, if we saw the exaggerated qualities and the misunderstanding of things, it couldn't arise. So this is a working hypothesis. I like how Robina Corton puts it. A working hypothesis. If I can bring my mind more clearly to how things actually arise and identify the true source of suffering, the true source of happiness, and try to be aware of that more frequently, I'll suffer less. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. But complicated, because we could sit here all day and we can get it. Oh yeah, I get it. I am traffic. And then we could be in traffic and be pretty frustrated. We can easily talk about how this person is another human being just like me, and really the cause of my annoyance around that person is not them, it's the way I think about them. And we can get that. We can talk about this all day long, and then you can walk out and be really annoyed, stuck in traffic, and be pissed off and frustrated, need to be somewhere. And then think that your spouse should be different than they are in that moment. And get frustrated and angry. So how do we sustain a way of bringing our mind back to reality to eliminate this mental emotional suffering so that we can live a life based in reality that is fulfilling, meaningful, and cultivates a sense of well-being, meaning, and purpose? And that's where these 5 powers come in. They're really solid practice that way. The first one is the power of resolve. That we resolve. We got to want to stop suffering. We've got to have a commitment to change, because it won't happen by talking about it. You starve to death reading a cookbook. Deep philosophical conversations that they're not going to change your life. So we need a resolve. We need some energy behind the change that we want to make in our lives. So preliminary to the 7-point mind training, the first practice is these 4 thoughts. It lays a foundation. It really prepares us with motivation and energy to make good use of our life. And so there are 4 meditations that just clarify things. If we clarify things, we'll be motivated. We'll be really motivated. One of them, the first thought is that we have a rare and precious human rebirth right now. And that's something we take for granted. We have a rare and precious human rebirth. And a rare and precious human rebirth, not all humans have. Very few of them, in fact, have a rare and precious human rebirth. And you have it. Just by virtue of sitting here right now, you have it. In Buddhist teachings, it said that it has taken eons of lifetimes to get all of the conditions ripened to be here in a path that can eliminate all suffering and awaken to your true nature. Eons of lifetimes. And all those conditions are ripened as you're sitting in a place with the Dharma and teachings and a lineage and a path that has been sustained for thousands of years. Tried, tested, and proven. There's a lot of people that are not sitting in a Dharma center on Wednesday night. There's a lot of people way too busy creating samsara to make time to eliminate it. That's most human beings. There's a lot of human beings that would love to eliminate samsara, but have no access to teachings. There's those that have no access to freedom of religion. There's those that can't read or write yet. There's those that are just trying to survive every day out of 7 billion humans. There's a small percentage of them that have resources, education, access to Dharma teachings. And of those, very few of them actually have an interest where the seeds have ripened to seek their true nature and to start finding the truth. Very few. Did you have it? why you're here. And there's a lineage here and a teaching here. We can take that for granted pretty easily. How few have access and have the inspiration. And if you don't even grasp the idea of multiple lifetimes, you can pretty much see in this lifetime how few human beings have this opportunity. So we have it. We have a rare and precious human rebirth. The technical teachings out is 18 specific qualities. It said it's so rare that it's like a blind sea turtle coming up out of the ocean in a little round ox sort of yoke, thing you put around it. Yeah, just floating on the ocean, and a turtle happens to poke its head up on a big ocean at the same time, and the yoke comes across. It's that rare to have the life that you have. Those kind of, wow, that's pretty important. And then the second thought is impermanence. I don't have it for long. This opportune physical form, more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. Right now, you have all the resources to eliminate all suffering and mental afflictions in your life, to achieve awakening, more precious than anything. You gain its like the once. We only have this right now. So hard to get, so easily destroyed. It's like a lightning flash in the sky. That's the life that we have. Eons to get it. All the conditions are ripened, and we can be gone tomorrow. Just like that. So the second thought is impermanence. Really recognizing that every day that we're awake, we're a day closer to our death. It's just the deal. We forget that a lot. This day is never going to come again. All of these qualities are here now. Pretty clear to remember that. Like a lightning flash in the sky. Contemplate this and you will see that all worldly actions are but wood and chaff. And so in our time here, the third thought is karma. What are we doing? Are we caught up in worldly actions? Am I spending all of my time in my life trying to line things up and to get things done so I can feel happy? For how long? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I mean, how if everything goes right just the way you want, how long does your happiness last? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? An hour? Ever been happy longer, like continuously? How long does that last? Can we be entirely just joy-filled and in family and content for an hour, 2 hours? And then can we be frustrated, annoyed, upset, worried? And how long does that last? And will I spend my whole life in confusion trying to get the world to go the way I would like and surround myself with the people I like and avoid the people I don't and try to arrange things so I can be comfortable as much as I can? And at the end of the day, what happens when the body dies? How much of my life have I lived? And how much of my life has been spent trying to avoid suffering and trying to seek happiness? And how much of my life in my quest for happiness actually cultivated suffering, worried about whether or not this happens, anxious over whether or not that'll turn out, carrying an old pain with me and a resentment with me that happened years ago that I can't let go of? How much of my life am I just inflicting myself with suffering because I'm seeking happiness in something that can't give it to me? All worldly actions are but wood and chaff. When this body ends, that's all gone. And what lives on? At the time of death, that's a certain time of death, uncertain what matters. The only thing that can help us at the time of death is our karma, how we've lived our life, what's meaningful. I like to introduce this in, a couple different levels. One is if you're not even a Buddhist or maybe even an atheist, this is it, one life, boom, done. At the end of life, what's going to matter to you? Is it all the things you worry about? Is it the things we stress over? Or fundamentally, at the end of your life, what's going to matter is how you lived your life. Is the world maybe a little better place because you're in it? Your loved ones know they're loved. From a Buddhist perspective, what lives on is the karmic imprints, what I have nourished, what I have watered. The body dies, and the consciousness is nonstop. The consciousness will just continue in a new form, in a new body. And all of the habits, all of the conditions, the karmic imprints will be propelling me into my next life. This opportune physical form more precious than wish fulfilling joy against like the once. So hard to get, so easily destroyed. It's like a lightning flash in the sky. Contemplate this, and you will see that all worldly actions are but window chafe, and night and day you must extract the essence of this life. The essence of this life. Consciousness, the awareness, the essence that we nurture. The body comes and goes. But what really matters is the essence. What have we been doing with our mind stream, our consciousness? And if you're Christian, same philosophy. So this applies human, atheist, Christian, right? You want to go to heaven, generally. What matters is how you live your life, not how much or how big your house is. What matters is how you live your life. If you want to be happy and have a sense of well-being, and you're just a human being who doesn't believe in or know about anything beyond that, the more you live an ethical life in alignment with your values, the more sense of worthiness and well-being you have in life. It's just the way that works. You feel better about who you are because you live a meaningful, purposeful life. Christian, hey, body ends, nothing to worry about. You get to go to heaven. Pretty cool. Buddhist, all this stuff come and go. What matters is how I engage in this life to continue on a path of liberation and freedom for all sentient beings. Pretty cool. Important. And the thing is that if we bear that in mind, the life that we live today becomes really easy because everything that's happening today is an opportunity to grow and learn and awaken. Everything that's happening is just human condition. That's what this is. It's a human condition, and grist for the mill and an opportunity to grow. We don't get hooked. You'll get hooked into confusion and exaggeration and trying to make all of this perfect in some way that it can't, because it can't do that. Nobody will not change. You're not going to find a situation that will give you lasting happiness. You'll find lasting happiness by how you engage with others. Doing things that are meaningful and purposeful. So this third thought is really understanding karma. If you look at karma, maybe we'll get to those 5 thoughts. Karma is a very big word in people's mind streams, and it's a very complicated, there's very complicated teachings on. But if you bring karma down at one level, it's not the whole of just one level. The dynamics are pretty straightforward, which is what I think and do and say a lot, I will have a propensity to do again. That's all. I create habits, and then those habits play out. I create neural pathways, the scientific ways of interacting and doing certain things, habits and attitudes The more I have those attitudes, reinforce those attitudes, I just do it more. Then I do it without even thinking, which happens on autopilot. So a lot of our lives as human beings is just autopilot. We're not even doing it. The karmic imprints, the impulses is just going on all by itself. Driving a stick shift, you're not even thinking about a stick shift. You're wearing yourself in. And then you'll say things out of your mouth. Things will come out of your mouth that you didn't consciously think. You're just saying it before you even think it. You ever catch yourself doing that? Those things are already out of the mouth, and people will be talking. You won't even be listening. And you might even respond, but you're not even there. Not even there. I think I probably tell you this, but you guys never get tired of my stories, right? You're new, so you get them. Yeah, no, just this fascinating habit I have is, when people, it's specific to me opening doors. I don't know why that is. Open a door for someone, and they'll say thank you. I'll say you bet. I mean, I really don't know why I want them to gamble. That's really not my intention. I don't want them to bet. But it'll just come out of my mouth. It's a funny thing. And thank you. Well, you bet. And yeah, it happens a lot when I travel because I go to truck stops and I'm open the door. And so I've started being mindful of that, trying to be aware of that. And I'll tell you, still half the time being mindful, because I'm going and doing things, open the door. So thank you, you bet. So this is something that's coming out of my mouth before I'm actually, because what I would like to say is you're welcome. Or of course, or something. I don't really want to encourage gambling. But somewhere it's entrenched. It's entrenched with a door opening. I don't know why. So that's just a very subtle thing. But how many things do we do in a day that we're not even there for? And it's just sheer habit. So karma plays out kind of like that. And I reify my attitudes about things, this sucks or that things. And then we talk about, sure, of course, that sucks. And I can't see it through a new lens. I can't, I just, as soon as I see something, I'm already reacting, I already stick a label. And I even have old joke lines that'll just come out as soon as I hear a word, and it's just, and I think they're funny. Poor Laura. So, we have these old triggers. They come up, they're sheer habit. And so we live in this life on autopilot out of sheer habit. And that's one way that karma plays out. It's one way it's very common. And so imagine what happens when I want to create a new habit, start to see things more accurately, like the interdependent way of things arising moment to moment, and understanding that, how I interact with you and how I perceive you has a lot to do with me. That's a new way of trying to see the world. It's a new habit. So with these three thoughts, we start to go, I have this rare and precious human rebirth. I won't have it long. It will come and it will go. What are the seeds I'm watering in my consciousness? And what's the garden that I'm growing? Are they seeds of loving kindness, compassion, acceptance, tolerance, well-being, wisdom? Or are they the seeds of dissatisfaction, anger, resentment, jealousy, confusion? What's the karma I'm creating? What are the thoughts that I indulge in? And and so many happen without me even, I'm not even thinking my thoughts. My thoughts are dragging me around. I'm caught up in them. So the third thought is to really, wow, I have this life. What are the seeds I'm watering? What's the karmic imprints I'm creating? Because that will, in this very lifetime, have an impact, but, beyond this lifetime. And then the fourth thought is really one of the most profound ones. And it is the catalyst to the Buddhist path, really, which is to recognize the nature of samsara, to realize there is a problem here, that there is a problem. It's really easy to forget that there's a problem when you're sitting in a jacuzzi, looking out at the snow. Doesn't seem like we're in a prison. Try to change a habit, and then you might find out you're in a prison. And so the fourth is to really understand the intrinsic dissatisfaction of this world that we live in, that its very nature is dissatisfaction. The very nature of life is, the real simple way is we're subject to be born, to get sick, to age, and to die. Like that's everybody. That's just the nature. But guess what? So is all your friends. So is everything else. It's just the nature of life. People are going to get sick. Cars are going to break down. People are going to have struggles. And it'll all just end. And I will be imprisoned by confusion in a way that I keep trying to find some way of having a lasting happiness that can't be provided here. And in that quest, I'll just create suffering, trying to get you to act the way I would like, and the world to go the way I would like. And it becomes a prison. It's kind of a pep talk. Because the pep talk is, once I know I'm in prison, guess what? I can get out. But once I understand that the only thing that's actually keeping me locked in is me, wow, what a different universe I get to live in. That my emotions and thoughts and worries and fears are not who I am. Wow, that's a whole different thing. My worries, thoughts, fears, that's not who I am. This body, come and go, no big deal. Everything that's happening in this lifetime is an opportunity to transform all of my prison into liberation. Wow, what a cool thing. I don't get hooked. I don't reify, make these deceptive appearances a phenomenon in the world I live in. I understand their transient nature. They're not going to come and they are going to come and go. They're not going to be solid. My deepest sadness won't last. It won't last. My fear won't last. My frustration won't last. Those are all transient things that I experience out of confusion, but they're not who I am. They're not my nature. And wow, what a different thing that if I start simply working on seeing things accurately and understanding the interdependent nature of how we interact, I'm going to stop being confused. And I'm going to stop creating suffering. And I'm actually going to discover something extremely profound, that the lasting happiness, bliss, well-being that I've been seeking my whole life, the connection that's there, is actually my very nature. And it's always there. The only thing obscuring it is me and this confused mind. And so pretty much all of Buddhism is about how do I clear away that confusion so I can recognize my true nature, which is already blissful, luminous, knowing. That's pretty cool. Sort of a pep talk now, right? And so how do we do that, though? Well, you need some kind of basic teachings to understand that, but, things aren't complicated. We make them very complicated. And they feel real. So that's the hard part is, boy, this is entrenched. That's the hard part. This is so entrenched. And our language that we use is so reifying to experiences. I mean, we all have someone, right, that we just know is really a jerk, right? We just know they are. I mean, you and I can talk all day about how it's not their intrinsic nature, they're like human being, they have all this stuff, but boy, put you in a room with them, it's going to hurt. It's going to seem so real. And we're going to just believe it's them. It's hard. So we need to chip away at this a little bit and start to understand the dynamics. And that's the cool thing. You start to understand the dynamics when I can start applying them. And I can start working with reality and interdependence in a meaningful way. And one thing that Canoe, one's great practice that I encourage people to do a lot is whenever you're notice some agitation, something like that, try an experiment, change your attitude. Right? I'm in traffic, I am traffic. How does that shift your whole experience? You'll start to notice there's an inner dynamic play here that has to do with, it's not the event, it's the meaning I'm bringing to the event. And pretty much if I'm mentally and emotionally suffering, the meaning of the event has a lot to do with me and how I think things should be. And see if we can catch ourselves. How about, here's an experiment to start playing with reality, is examine when you catch yourself saying, this should not have happened. It should not be like this. Because that's insane. If something happens, is there a cause for it happening? Does anything happen without a cause? So if we say something shouldn't happen, well, it did happen, so there were causes for it. So the only thing that says it shouldn't have happened really is me thinking that it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. And there's causes for it. Which is very different than just shifting that to, I don't like that this happened. And I would like to make sure this doesn't happen again. Well, that's a little more based in reality, isn't it? And there's a lot of pain and suffering going around the idea that this should not have happened. You know, if only they would have listened to me when I told them to do this. If only. That's another classic one. Boy, if only. If we use the words if only with anything to do with the past, everything I say is pretty much a fantasy in my mind. It has no basis in reality other than my mental construct. If only this would have happened, then this and this and this would have happened. Well, first off, it didn't happen, and then everything else is made up. And I don't know what would have happened if they would have done this, because it never happened. And then I'll create a whole story in my mind, and I'll be pretty frustrated because it didn't happen. But my life would be so much better if only. So these are these mental loops we get in that create a lot of suffering. So if we just start seeing, how about if we unravel those? We can start working with the dynamics of interdependence and what's my attitude that I'm bringing to a experience? Do I really make it real? Like this person that I didn't like a year ago has frozen in time and they'll never change and they'll always be this hateful person, 10 years later, that they couldn't possibly change or ever do anything nice ever. Because my mind can do that. But is that based in reality? Probably not. Probably it's another human being a lot like me who did something that I didn't like or was harmful and has also done kind things and helpful things. Yeah. And in this particular moment, is a new moment. And that person's different. The person I have a resentment for from 5 years ago doesn't even exist. I'm carrying a resentment towards someone who does not exist. That person of 5 years ago, they're a totally different person today. And the person that I have made up in my mind with all of the characteristics of that person frozen in time from 5 years ago is only in my mind. It exists nowhere but my mind. I'm angry at my mind, but I'm calling it a person, and I'm carrying a resentment, and I can't heal a wound around someone that doesn't exist, except in my mind. So these are the ways confusion creates a lot of mental, emotional suffering in my life. So first step is, let's start working with that a little bit. Let's start to say, hey, instead of creating suffering and dissatisfaction in my life, how about I start opening myself up to understanding that how I experience the world, and that's just a starting point, is subjective. What's that? The world we experience, you can only experience the world subjectively. There's no other way. The world you all experience is not going to be exactly the same as mine. There's no frozen, objective, quantifiable thing out there that we all experience. Everything that you experience, food, people, the weather, all that, is always going to be a very personal, subjective experience. And you can only experience it through your lens of experience based on, we would say, through karma and klesha that you've created over time. Or just on a human level through the way you were raised, the family you're raised in, the experiences you've had, the traumatic ones, the happy ones, they've all shaped your personal culture, and that's how you experience the world, and whether or not you like grits or not. Not that grits are delicious or not delicious. Some people will get excited about it. But we'll think the grits are delicious, or we'll think grits are not delicious. I'm not even sure what grits are, but it came out. What are grits?
Corn.
What?
Corn.
Corn. Okay, corn. Thank you. I like Brussels sprouts. Anybody here like Brussels sprouts? All right, that's a pretty good number. All right, yeah. I think they're intrinsically delicious, but some people don't like them. So that, that's the, I love that because it's so clear. I find them delicious, somebody else doesn't. But I'll think they are delicious. And really, it's an interdependent experience. I've created conditions to have a delicious experience in this body. Brussels sprouts touches me. And somebody else finds it, like, really? And they're having a different experience. Same thing, same phenomenon, same thing. And so, but we forget all that, and we really think the world's the way I see it and the way I experience it. And then everybody else is like that. So if I start playing with this dynamic of understanding the inner play, I can start creating conditions where I can have more pleasant experiences and less difficult ones. One day we'll do the 5 power sign. Could happen. This was all a nice lead-in to the second point of the 5 points within the 4th point of the 7-point mind training. We have lots of lists. But I think it's so relevant because if I start to understand how this dynamic works, I don't even have to be a Buddhist to transform my life. Because it's so safe. That what makes the Brussels sprouts delicious isn't the Brussels sprouts, and it's not me. There's something that's arising, and from a Buddhist karmic understanding, the reason I have a delicious experience when Brussels sprouts touch me is because I've done wholesome activities in my previous experiences. So, yep, being nice to people, that's what makes Brussels sprouts delicious. Isn't that cool?
That's cool, but it's hard to make that connection.
Yeah, because it's delayed. You know what I mean? That's the issue, is that it's delayed. So wholesome and unwholesome activities the way they're defined is this activity will create a pleasurable result, period. This unwholesome activity will create an unpleasant result. Just like that, pretty straightforward. There's no judgment, good, bad, right, and wrong. Just you do this a lot, you're going to have some unpleasant experiences. You do this, you'll have pleasant ones. And so that's why the foundation of all Buddhism, as well as almost any other spiritual tradition, is ethics. Ethics, 10 Commandments. We have 10 virtuous activities, these types of things. Avoid these unvirtuous activities, engage in these virtuous ones. And the more that I engage in virtuous ones, I'm going to create different karmic imprints in my mind stream that will give rise to pleasurable results. So if you really want to not have annoying people in your life, yelling at people and calling them names is not going to do it. But becoming more tolerant and kind and understanding, you're going to have less annoying people in your life. The more that I engage in virtuous activity, it's healthy and meaningful. Yeah, number one, I have an immediate impact of a greater sense of well-being and worthiness, value, resiliency. That's just natural. The more I do things that I really feel are meaningful and virtuous, I'm going to feel virtuous. It's good. Not rocket science. None of this is rocket science. But the delayed thing is interesting to experiment with, because as I engage in this, then the more virtuous activities, the more karmic imprints that will provide pleasurable experiences. So that's why one person having an experience of car breaking down could be a catastrophe. Another one, not that's such a big deal. Somebody gets a leg broken, well, that's just, a broken leg. Someone else, oh my God, this shouldn't have happened. And the imprints that we're creating, the way we experience pain that comes will be different. So understanding this, that my base level is this, my natural state is something way beyond all of that confusion. I will clear away all that dirt that's on top. And so as you engage in these more wholesome activities over time, you're going to find that in general, you're going to have much more pleasant experiences, whether it be food or people or job type things. And the job doesn't have to be a great job. It could be the same job that someone else hates, but you don't hate it. And the people in your life, you're just going to find a lot less jerks. And they haven't changed. They haven't changed. So our problem is, if we don't understand the laws of karma, we don't understand delayed the delayed process of that. And so when I get angry because you did me wrong, what do? I yell at you and I give anger. So what am I doing? I'm watering seeds of anger, and I'm validating my anger, and I'm going to find a lot more jerks out there. When I get abused by you in some way, I recognize that, whew, you've got to be suffering. Imagine, people don't do that when they feel good and happy and peaceful. They do this malicious activity because of their own confusion and suffering. Then instead of taking it out on you, I respond appropriately to put a boundary and accountability out of compassion, hoping that you'll suffer less, but we need to be accountable. And there's no anger. There's no sense for anger. Why would I be angry that you're suffering? And out of confusion or doing harmful things. It's much wiser to be compassionate and then set the boundary so neither of us suffer. And then I'm creating a whole different experience with how I interact with you. And then later, it's easier to get along with people. So that works out on a very conventional level as a human being, but karmically, we're watering again habits and conditionings, how I perceive you, how I interact with others. And when I understand that process, then I can understand that it doesn't matter what's happening to me. The only thing that's relevant is how I respond. Am I responding in a way that's going to cultivate merit and wisdom, the path to awakening? Everything that's happened to me here is an opportunity to wake up, to engage in skillful activity. It's cool. It's opening. So that's that forethought. But if I don't know there's a problem, I'm not going to change. So if samsara, our conditioned existence, seems pretty good, why would I change? Why would I put through all that effort to tame my mind, to meditate, to engage in these activities, to feel some discomfort? If I think it's pretty good, because you know what? Yeah, tough day, but I'll go get in the jacuzzi and I'll be fine. It's hard to recognize that ongoing struggle when I'm sitting in a jacuzzi. Unless you're there for 2 hours, it's really hot. You'll suffer. So these four thoughts are what are providing, wow, I don't ever have to get caught up out of confusion, and I want to quit creating the suffering, because the only thing that's putting me in samsara is me. That's it. There's nobody's doing this to me except me. My mind is the one that's creating all these problems. And I can change that, because that is not who I am. And it's sheer habit. So those four thoughts are what really prepare the ground to engage in the first of the five powers, which is resolve. I want to resolve to make the best use of this life to cultivate awakening for myself and all sentient beings. This is all totally unnecessary. It is second thought. But does that sound helpful? To understand the framework? Because if we understand the framework, wow, it's so tangible about how to use this day. So those four thoughts are something that is taught, that we take a lot of time to meditate, and this within all these teachings in the 7-point mind training, the preliminary practices, is really recognizing the value of this life, its very impermanent nature. Noting that in this lifetime, I'm watering certain seeds that are harmful and certain ones that are beneficial, to be aware of which seeds I'm watering that'll give rise to eliminate the suffering of this cycle of existence, this prison I put myself in. And then I can do it. And it's not dependent on you. It's not dependent on anyone else. Sort of. Key components be. And it starts with engaging in ethical behavior based in wisdom, understanding your independence. And the only way to do that is to have a clear and balanced mind, my attention. So that's why we work with meditation, so I can be present. Now that I'm present, I'm going to be present with my ethics and what seeds I'm watering. If I don't want to be angry, I'm going to water compassion. And I'm going to be wise, understanding the interdependent nature of the moment I'm caught up in, and I'm so frustrated right now, I won't be in 10 minutes or an hour. And that's not who I am. It's an emotion I'm experiencing. And you got some good tools to engage in life in a way that's more skillful and will eliminate a lot of unnecessary mental emotional suffering. So that's the Buddhist path, is these 3 hour trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. We imbue it with compassion, bodhicitta, and that's the whole Tibetan path. Yeah. So pretty simple, right? But hard to do because we have sheer habit. And so those 5 powers, if you were to come to the retreat this weekend, we would talk about those. and practice them. But they're really having a firm resolve, a familiarity with practices of seeing things in a new, fresh way, using all of the experiences that we have to cultivate the good karmic imprint, the spiritual energy to transform, abandon a grasping of self that's not true, and engage in virtuous mental activity, prayer. Those are the 5 powers. 5. Yeah. Any questions, thoughts? Those of you online, do you have anything that may come to mind? If so, let us know, because I got a whole 2 minutes left or so. You always pause because online it might take them a minute.
Marielle says thank you.
You're welcome, Marielle. Thanks out there in Oklahoma. I was doing a broadcast from Oklahoma, Dharma teaching that was being broadcast. And on the other end was Laura Bartels, who I'd only met once. She's now my wife. So I really like Oklahoma. And she was in Grand Junction. I was in Oklahoma. We were doing a broadcast. They had computer issues, so she had to help out. And when it came up, there was her face. I was like, oh. Hi there. How you doing? Yeah. I'd met her once, 10 months earlier at a retreat at Juanita. She was there with her boyfriend. So I always thought it was really awkward that she brought her boyfriend to our first date. Yeah. Who would know? 10 months later, we'd bump into each other like that. And she was single and I was. So, yeah, so far worked out.
Your Now Center says they love us.
Thank you. Here and Now Center. Yeah. We love you too. All right. Well, let's do a dedication to. We did spend a Wednesday evening here cultivating merit and wisdom for the benefit of all sentient beings. So let's dedicate this for that purpose. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we've accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and find their path to awakening. May we be able to use the merit and the wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives, both collectively and individually, to purify our minds, to help recognize and wake up to our true nature, our Buddha nature, and be free of suffering so we can truly be a benefit to all sentient beings. All right. Thank you all so much. So good to have you all here. And